self-help books and really habit change books at large have a problem. They have a reputation for being not good. And some of that criticism is fair. They do have a reputation for being overly general, relying on dubious metaphysics, for giving off an air of inspiration. But then you reflect on what you just read, you reflect on an entire chapter and think to yourself, what did I really just learn? What is an actionable takeaway from all those pages I just read? This is something I have for sure experienced, and I'm sure you have too if you've gone down the self-help rabbit hole. That said, there is good stuff out there. Don't reject the genre because of the cliche, but it can be a chore. It can absolutely be a feat to find the books that are actually going to connect the dots for you in a way that may be potentially life-changing. So given that, I thought I would save you some time. I think I'm in a unique position to do just that, because if you don't know me, my name is Michael Phillip, and not only have I read dozens and dozens of books that at least loosely fit under the category of self-help, I've interviewed hundreds of people, psychologists, philosophers, religious teachers, artists, many of whom were promoting books that at least broadly fit under that self-help category. So I have encountered a lot of ideas and a lot of books over the years. And there are a few that stick out to me. There are a few that I continually reference, I continually think about, all of them for different reasons that I think are really complementary, as you're going to see in this video. And on that note, I think that if you use all four of these books synergistically, it will change the way you approach work, it will change the way you approach your habits, even your spiritual understanding of who you are and what your purpose is in life. But before we get into it, speaking of self-help, help myself by liking and subscribing if you find these musings amusing, if they perk up your wonder whiskers. Quick note, I'm not being overly anal with what I'm including in the category of self-help. Yes, some of these books would fit more neatly under the popular psychology category or habit change or science or whatever. But for the purposes that matter, these books, in my opinion, are self-help. If you vehemently disagree with me, let me know in the comments and we can have a spirited keyboard battle. So book number one is going to come as no surprise to you if you listen to the podcast. It is Soul's Code by the psychologist James Hillman. I've talked about it ad nauseum on the podcast because when it comes to providing a mythological scaffolding for life, I think this book is indispensable. And when I say mythological, I mean that in the most complimentary, romantic way possible. So in Soul's Code, Hillman outlines a worldview that is romantic, soulful, filled with purpose and destiny, but he does so without going overly woo, without going overly rosy. Hillman, who, as I said, was a psychologist that unfortunately passed away in 2011, knew that we as individuals were so much more complex and multidimensional than any diagnosis or personality type. And in Soul's Code, and really his work in general, he did his best to convince us all of that, to inject the soul back into psyche, to inject the psyche back into psychology. The big takeaway here is we are not mistakes. We are not just the sum of our parts physically. We actually do come into this world with purpose, calling, talents, what could even be called a destiny. That we are singular and unique, and we should pay attention to what those unique qualities are and go toward them, because that's where our destiny lies, or at least a kind of destiny. And if you think about that popularly, in Disney terms, it does sound overly romantic, but there are some mature caveats to the way Hillman talks about destiny. This is not the kind of destiny where we're all going to be Dogecoin millionaires, own a Ferrari, and get 1 million TikTok followers. This is a destiny that's filled with growing pains as well as beauty. This is a destiny that requires going against the grain so that we can go on the adventure of becoming who we really are. Something that, by the way, the vast majority of people will never do because they'll stay on that well-worn path. They'll stay in jobs, they'll stay in relationships that aren't going to lead to their personal maturation. The analogy Hillman uses throughout this book that really brings this big idea together is the acorn and the oak tree. If you looked at an acorn, you would never think that that weird little knob has the potential to become a grand, sprawling oak tree. But of course it does. And that's what we are, according to Hillman. We are these beings filled with latent, beautiful, fractal possibilities, deep complexity, but most of us are never going to realize it. But as Hillman argues throughout Soul's Code, if we are courageous enough to follow our inner whisper, to really explore the people we're meant to become, we can become these great, unique beings. I'm so tempted to go deeper on this, how it all hinges on Platonic myths and Platonic philosophy and listening to your daimon, developing a relationship with your genius, but I'm going to save that for another video and tell you just go buy Soul's Code and let's get into the next book. Book number 2 is The Awakened Brain by Dr. Lisa Miller. This book really harmonizes with Hillman's worldview because it also hinges on the power of spiritual purpose and a personal calling. But it does so in a different way because it stems from scientific rigor. Dr. Miller's own neuroscientific research really runs throughout this book. And the research starts with a really simple question. What's the difference in the brain of a spiritual person versus a person who identifies as non-spiritual? And what Dr. Miller found was remarkable. Notable brain architecture differences in spiritual people versus non-spiritual people. So the big takeaway is not that hopefully you're born with a brain that makes you more spiritual. No, this is something you can learn. This is something you can change. If you find spiritual purpose in your own life, you'll be more resilient, more inspired, more driven, measurably healthier, measurably lower instances of depression and anxiety. And this is where the what could be called self-help comes in, because this is an effort. You have to mindfully expose yourself to wonder, gratitude, mind-opening experiences, people and ideas that stir your soul. Yes, these are big picture general ideas, but as Dr. Miller's research shows, they have a profound effect on your brain and your subjective sense of well-being. Really, I think this book shows, and Dr. Lisa Miller's work shows, that human beings are incomplete without a spiritual dimension to their life. They're missing something without a spiritual dimension to their life. And she makes it clear that this is totally non-dogmatic. We can find this through a myriad of methods, traditions, and philosophies, as long as we achieve that deep sense of greater meaning and community and purpose. And if you want what I would say is a stellar introduction to Dr. Lisa Miller's work and her book, The Awakened Brain, check out the podcast I did with her right here or in the description. At this point, you might be saying to yourself, these are nice ideas, but Michael, this all sounds pretty loosey-goosey. This all sounds pretty abstract. You might be guilty of some of the very same things you were admonishing about self-help at the top of this video. Well, my friends, that's actually by design, because for me at least, I need a philosophical foundation. I need my why before I start thinking about discrete habit change and how to optimize my behaviors, which, by the way, is where we're going with the second 2 books on this list, deep into the practical. And the first one we're going to do that with is The Art of the Impossible by Steven Kotler. And I don't know why I held that book up, but not the others. Here's Awakened Brain. Here's Soul's Code. So I want to acknowledge Art of the Impossible is one of those books the author might smack me for calling self-help. Yes, it's a kind of how-to science-based book in many ways, but it absolutely, in my opinion, broadly deserves to be called self-help because it will help you more than 99% of all self-help books. Because this book is packed with practical, research-backed nuggets that I am 100% certain will change your life if you implement them regularly. If you know Steven Kotler, you have an idea of where I'm going with this. He's a world-renowned expert and journalist who's written extensively on the topic of flow states and optimization and peak performance. The list of people he's worked with is absolutely staggering. Silicon Valley legends, pro athletes, huge companies, and that's because his shit really works. Specifically, if you want to know how to inspire and motivate yourself, how to set the best conditions to achieve creative flow states regularly, how to learn more quickly and more efficiently, why your goal setting sucks, how to set better goals. This book, sincerely, has so many practical, research-backed elements. It's really a distillation of all of the work Steven Kotler has done on flow states and peak performance. So I can't recommend it enough. Art of the Impossible by Steven Kotler. Book 4 is one I'm sure you've heard of. It's really on everybody's list, and for good reason. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The whole premise is dead on and really refreshing in my opinion, because my God, am I tired of the hack angle in general. Everyone has some shortcut. Everyone has some method, some angle to sell you. And in many ways, James Clear's Atomic Habits is the antithesis of that way of thinking. It's about small, regular, effective changes over time. And really, I think we all intuitively know that's the way to make real lasting change. That if something sounds too good to be true, that we don't achieve anything of note overnight, that it's a matter of showing up again and again. And James Clear demonstrates this with everyone from, the top 1% of athletes to a regular person who wants to lose weight. More specifically, okay, so you want to lose 100 pounds. Great, but that's actually a terrible, ineffective goal, because how do you even begin to tackle such a huge goal? You have to change your diet, you have to exercise, you might have to stop drinking, you might have to stop hanging out with certain groups of friends. It becomes too big to really be tangible. So the James Clear approach would be goal number 1, put on your workout shoes. Cross that off your list. Goal number 2, go to the gym. And by the way, this could be across multiple days. Goal number 3, go to the gym and get on the treadmill. Actually walk on the treadmill. Now suddenly you're lining up these wins. You're little by little actually altering the atomic makeup of the habits that are your life. Again, this is how real habit change, real life change occurs, by investing little by little in yourself day in and day out. And Atomic Habits has so many phenomenal methods by which you can do that. There's a good portion of the book dedicated to actual exercises, to writing things down. And I think that's a sorely missing aspect from a lot of so-called self-help books. Pulling the person in, getting them to start thinking immediately about how they can apply these things into their own life. And I think Atomic Habits is extremely successful in that respect. So there you have it, my friends. I really do think if you connect the philosophy of these 4 books together, you've got a really life-altering suite of ideas, from the philosophical to the practical. And I think these 4 books alone are going to give you more than 99% of all other self-help books, at least in my experience. That said, there are really honestly so many good books that broadly fit under the self-help category. I want to give an honorable mention to the book What Doesn't Kill Us by my friend Scott Carney, along with his other book The Wedge, actually, both fantastic. So there you go, a little bonus for the Wonder Dippers who stuck with me the whole way through. On that note, much love for Wonder Dipping with me today, my friends. If you enjoyed the musings, subscribe here on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the podcast. It's called Third Eye Drops. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. We've got a mountain of activities and extras over on Patreon. And of course, that is the best way to support this media vessel most directly. Let me know what your favorite, most profound read has been as of late in the comments. Much love, and we'll see you in the next one.